That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul, the directorial debut of Adamma Ebo, which premiered at the 2022 Sundance Film Festival and is being released courtesy of Focus Features and Peacock on September 2nd, 2022.
You saw this movie a while ago.
Yeah, in January.
And then we watched it again. Yes, you watched it again yesterday, right?
We both did.
That's right. Okay. What did you think?
I think what I remember saying last January is one of the better films I saw out of Sundance, but I still had a lot of... There are a lot of... I think the film has a lot of issues, which of course we'll talk about, but it has two really great performances from Regina Hall and Sterling K. Brown. There were two Regina Hall films that premiered at that festival, this and Master, which was another film that I thought had a problem landing some of the sticking points, that it could have been a bit more cohesive. But... to me, this is like Greenleaf meets a Christopher Guest mockumentary, but maybe not as good as either of those references would suggest.
I would agree with that. I enjoyed it well enough, but I wanted it to be so much more.
Yes.
The basic story is Sterling K. Brown and Regina Hall play a married couple, Lee Curtis and Trinitie Childs. Mm-hmm. They run a church called...
the Wander to Greater Paths Baptist Church.
It's a mega church in Atlanta. They're super rich, super popular, but they get taken down because of a sex scandal relating to Lee Curtis. And the film is set up like a mockumentary, and it's documenting their return to opening the church. So the church has been closed down, and they're planning on reopening it on Easter Sunday.
And a documentarian named Anita Bonet is in the background with a film crew following them around.
And the story's pretty basic. We don't get a lot of things. It's just watching them sort of prepare for this opening on Easter Sunday. There's not a lot of preparation happening. We do see that while we also don't get any information on timelines, but while their church has been shut down, most of their congregation has gone to another church,
Heaven's House, by the
Sumpters.
The Sumpters, Nicole, Beharie, and Conphidance are Keon and Shakura Sumpter.
And I'm confused on the timing because they run their church out of like a smaller building, but they have purchased them. And I'm not sure if this building was already erected or they built it, but they're now opening their own mega church, and it's also opening on Easter Sunday. So sort of the Childs trying to figure out like how to stop the Sumpters from opening up their church on the same day, which sounds like it could be really like melodramatic, but it's not. They go ask them, they say no. So then Lee Curtis decides, well, let's open up the Sunday before Easter.
And then the Sumpters, without telling them,
also open up. So then
a week before as a gesture of kindness, but it's like you could have communicated that. But
so it's opening day, and of course no one shows up to the Childs' church because they're all at the Sumpters. The end.
Basically, yeah.
I don't even know where to begin.
Well, I think we can begin with a positive. I think Regina Hall is very good, and always,
she's always a joy.
Always watchable.
Yeah, so watchable. She's gorgeous in this film. Her character is, into like fashion and hats, so she looks great. Sterling K. Brown does such a good job of seeming like, he's just a fucking... My first note is that he is like so good at being a creep in this movie.
He has definitely manufactured himself into being a predator, but there's also a heartbreaking element, because there are 3 scenes I can think of where he's alone with a younger man, and just how he's destroying himself by being this person that he's not, and just his kind of need to touch other men is like,
well, we can get into
it's hard
that
to watch.
But so those are the 2 positives, or those 2 performances.
And they're both producers on this film, as are executive producers Jordan Peele and Daniel Kaluuya.
So I'm just going to go through my notes and then we can talk about other things. But there's a scene where, because they're sort of acting towards the documentarian, right? So we get a scene of them back at their mega church, and they have like this amazing closet filled with designer fashion. And they're talking about what they're going to wear on opening day.
And they seem so happy.
And it's like, that's the only time they seem happy throughout the film, is when they're talking about their fashions. I thought that was funny. Okay, the Sumpters, the wife, That actor?
Nicole Beharie.
I know her from Miss Juneteenth.
Miss Juneteenth. She also has a film opening this week called Breaking, starring John Boyega, which she's really good in. And her debut.
Oh, you've seen Breaking?
Yeah, I saw that. That was at Sundance as well. It used to be called 892.
People asked if we were going to review that, but I haven't seen it.
It's Boyega's quite good in it.
Is it a horror film?
No, it's based on a true story about a veteran that robs a bank.
Oh.
Basically. Not to reduce it as much more than that, but and then her debut performance in American Violet opposite Alfre Woodard is it also worth checking out.
I feel we reviewed Miss Juneteenth, and the only thing I remember from that movie is I was so annoyed that Miss Juneteenth is a pageant relating to Juneteenth, and the winner gets a full scholarship to an HBCU, and all they have to do is perform like one talent.
Yeah.
I was like, can you imagine?
These Drag Race girls have to go through hoops, but yes, and then thinking that her daughter should just perform the same piece by Maya Angelou that she did to win this award. Anyway, so yeah.
So again, this feels like a watered down, like if Christopher Guest directed an episode of Greenleaf, but we get a scene of like the Childs have 5 members of their congregation who have stuck with them the entire time.
That they call the Devout Five.
The Devout Five. And one of them is a child. And there's a scene where the child gets like the Holy Spirit.
During a practice run. Yeah.
I thought that was a good scene. And then Lee Curtis, Sterling K. Brown's character, he starts taking off all of his clothes, but we don't know why. So of course everyone's like, "What?"
Well, because the essence of the first new Sunday is rebirth.
But he's doing it because he's getting in the water to be baptized again. But I thought that entire scene was good. Then when they leave that, because Regina Hall's character is irritated with him, like, "What the hell are you doing?" They get into their Escalade, and they start listening to like some southern rap music with some pretty aggressive lyrics, and they're both rapping to it.
That's a good scene.
I thought that was a good scene. I want to talk about how I don't feel like the film is lavish enough, because this couple, we're being told that they've made millions and millions of dollars, and they live in this super lavish house, and Lee Curtis references him driving a Bugatti, like a multi-million-dollar car, and we don't see any of that. We do see them sitting in front of a nice house, and then we see her in like an infinity pool. We see them driving the Escalade. We see them at one point in front of some fancy cars, but we don't really get the sense of how lavish their lifestyles were. And then, now that they are scandalized and not preaching, you can talk about it more, but they don't have staff. Like,
there's no. You would need so many people working to open this church the way that they need to. They would both probably need assistants. They would both. There's no groundskeepers. There's no social media. I mean, the only thing they're doing. They're not. Their scandal got so much media attention, it would seem, based on the news clips we see, that why wouldn't they be giving an interview announcing that they're opening again?
Well, we need to explain that, because Lee Curtis's idea for because now they're not opening on Easter, they're opening the Sunday before. Lee Curtis's bright idea is to stand on the street with like a poster board saying "Honk for Jesus, save your soul," hoping that will bring people into the church. But like you just said, the scandal garnered so much media attention. These two could have probably had an interview. I mean, the way the film shows it, I feel like they could have had an interview with like Diane Sawyer and announced that they're opening the church back up, and they would have been flooded with people.
And they're both reasonably intelligent, and their church, their mega church, is located off of a highway. It's like Highway 127, the sign says, and where they're initially preaching and she's holding up the sign, there's nobody ostensibly that would even hear a word he's saying as cars are whizzing by. It just, and then, I don't know if you want to get to the prayer mime sequence yet, but to me, this is based on an earlier short film in 2018 that Adamma Ebo did, and I saw some of the stills from that also used that gag. But we needed to have that introduced a little further, or a little earlier on, about what a prayer mime is, because he just tells her that we need a gimmick, because they roll this black Jesus statue out there. He's like, that's not enough. You need to do the prayer mime, and how kind of demeaning that is for her.
Right, like how humiliating. Okay, my biggest problem with the story, besides not really understanding the sort of the lavish lifestyle they're leading And again, I'm not trying to compare this to Greenleaf, but I just feel like for melodrama, Greenleaf did it so well.
Well, it's a soap opera, but
Right. Is that we don't get a sense of like the child's intentions. I don't believe or not believe that they really are buying into what they're talking about.
No, but
versus in Greenleaf, I really do feel like the Greenleafs were like they thought they were doing God's work and they just got caught up in some bullshit to get to the point they are now. But with the Childs, they just seem like people who like money and things, but then they don't seem that corrupt or evil.
Right.
So it's just like, who are these people?
But they do seem. I get the sense that, like, especially with Trinity, feels abandoned by the community. Like, because she has some line about we spiritually nourish these people, and they've really just turned their backs on them.
But she's just saying that. We don't really see it. We get one scene where Trinity, Regina Hall's character, goes to the mall, and she goes to a hat shop. And the hat shop looks real pop-up.
Bathsheba's Bonnets, though, is a great name.
Bathsheba's Bonnets. And it looks like something that, like one of those stores that's only open for one holiday a year.
It looks like a Halloween store.
It's real makeshift.
I would not pay $2,300 for a hat.
And then she finds like a Fascinator hat that is $2,300. I just can't believe a hat like that would be in a store like that and just sitting out like that. But whatever, it is what it is. And while she's in that mall, one of the members of her congregation sees her and is like, oh, well, I go to that new church now. It's a shame that y'all got caught up in this bullshit. That's the only sort of scene we get where we see kind of like the shame that's been brought to her. I feel like the movie really should have... I guess I'm just really thinking about Greenleaf, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, and then because it's a mockumentary, it's giving me Christopher Guest, and I just feel like all three of those entities did every aspect of it better than this one. But it just feels so watered down. It's not humorous. That lady, Regina Hall's character, she's been humiliated, and we don't get a sense of how that makes her feel. Even in the end, it all culminates with the mime scene where Sterling K. Brown says, the Black Jesus doll is not bringing in the people, so let's have you do this mime.
Prayer mime.
Like prayer mime, which basically means she's doing interpretive dance, like sign language.
With whiteface. Which look, I mean, when you cut to her in that mime makeup, it's a riot, because...
For a minute,
but
it's
like,
okay,
wait, what are we doing here, and what kind of an effect is this having on her?
And then she gets upset and basically, like, she's arguing with the documentarian and saying, like, I'm not going to talk to you about this. Like, my marriage is strong. Because the documentarian says, why don't you leave him? And she says, that's my husband. Before I leave him, I'd kill him. That's the most we get from her. And then the final sort of, like, you know, Trinity Childs setting her husband straight is throughout the film. Once she buys that $2,300 hat, because it's kind of like, it kind of reminds me of the hat Aretha wore at Obama's inauguration.
So it tracks in being kind of like for an older woman.
Because he's Lee Curtis is making fun of her, saying it's kind of an elderly hat, and that's not really the image we're trying to get.
These were matronly shoes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If you don't know what Nick's talking about, look up Tiffany Pollard and Gemma Collins. Tiffany going off about these shoes.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's making fun of her hat, and in the final scene of the film, Regina finally tells him, look, there are going to be times when you feel like you need to say something to me, but I'm going to ask you that you keep that shit to yourself, basically. And that's all we get from her character. Yeah. This man has shamed you, humiliated you, not just within your marriage, but he has you out on the street in whiteface. And, like, we don't get anything. Then we get a sex scene of them, like, in the middle of the film.
We should talk about that, yeah.
Where, okay, the other problem I have is I don't know who wrote this.
The director.
So I don't know their association to, like, the gay community. But I feel like maybe this person needed, like, a gay consultant. Because I just feel like we have a lot of real-life examples of Black religious figures in the South getting caught up in sex scandals. Yeah, namely same-sex scandals. And I'm thinking like an Eddie Long, which this, you know, minus him being dead now, feels very familiar to what we're seeing in the movie. We have a lot of examples of this. So I feel like for 2022, knowing that the community of people who are probably going to watch this are familiar with this kind of story, it needed to push boundaries. And I think the fact that the way Lee Curtis is procuring men, he's being very overt. And I feel like a man like him would not be finding sex this way.
Well, it's almost like any opportunity he has, he just...
any opportunity he has to be around a young man, he gets very like aggressive with them.
Predatorial, yeah.
And it's like, that's not how someone like him, there are people like that, but then I feel like he wouldn't have been able to fly under the radar so long.
Right.
So then it's like, for someone like him, he probably would have been on like Grindr or Jacked, or he would have been hiring escorts out of town. Like,
Because he can afford a Bugatti, so he would probably have escorts, yeah.
And then and then their sex scene, I'm assuming that the writer was trying to show that he has gay tendencies because Regina wants to have sex with him, and he's like, okay, and then he wants her to flip over, like he wants to hit it from the back. And then the way it plays out, I'm like, I'm not quite sure what they're trying to show. Like, is he trying to do anal, or is he just trying to penetrate her vaginally from the back? I mean, these are details that are kind of important.
Sure.
And then he can't stay erect. So he gets frustrated. She's trying to help him, and he says, well, why don't you do that thing that you do sometimes. And then she goes down on him. I assumed she was eating his ass.
I assumed it was oral sex.
But either way, it's like, well,
based on how it plays
it
out.
would have made more sense if she was eating his ass. But then it's the way he's positioned, and the fact that he probably wasn't prepared for that doesn't make sense. But I just feel like it wasn't written in a way that was edgy enough, because I think the audience, we can handle it. Like, we already know that there are religious figures out here on this bullshit. Like,
there's a more complex way, I think. At this point in their relationship and the scandal that he's already put her through, I believe he would be trying to appease her if she's still trying to have sex with him.
We should have seen him taking Viagra or something. Like,
there would be some other, or maybe he just couldn't look at her face while there would be other ways to show that. I think that'd be more interesting than just turn over.
And then the comedy aspect of it is, it's like humorous. But I think if I had to trade in that light humor for more drama, I would have done that. Or I would have, like, I just really wanted to feel more for this. The mime scene should have had me crying. It should have driven me to the point where I just felt like this poor woman
is unraveling.
But it doesn't take me there, because it's kind of like because at one point she says, like, you need to get yourself together because I want to be back up on that stage. So I got the sense that her character likes the attention and the money and the accolades.
But also in how it makes her feel, where the Sumpters are co-pastors, and how really her role is kind of archaic potentially in this scenario. But before we go on, I wanted to mention, I'd forgotten until this morning about that scene. I think it's Scary Movie 2, where Regina Hall is dating a closeted gay person. They make her put on a football outfit. I think it again, like as you said, that it needed a much more grand scale. We needed to have, just think of all the great exposition, because there's enough material here based on this concept to have a saga of these people and this scandal. And if we had an opportunity to have their assistants interviewed, per se, people that would be doing things for them, that would kind of showcase the neurosis a little bit more.
Just imagine how fun this would have been if each of them had an assistant, and each assistant is sort of the opposite of the other, and they sort of see through all the bullshit, and the documentarian, we're getting footage of them talking about them. Because it seems like this movie didn't have the biggest budget, and maybe because of COVID, they couldn't. So it's like, that could have been an easy way to add 2 more characters, add a lot more texture, a little more like wink, wink, nudge, nudge that is just missing. This just really feels like this was written like 20 years ago, and maybe this was like, something that the elders could find palatable. Like, it can't be too gay, it can't be too edgy. You can't really. It's unfortunate because the 2 leads are so good.
I agree.
That I think this could have been like a home run.
Yes, and I don't know, I've liked Regina Hall for a long time. If you haven't seen Support the Girls from a few years ago, I think that was in my top 10 that year, by Andrew Bujalski, that is really worth a watch. But I find her, what else was she in where she was being cheated on? Oh, Girls Trip, wasn't she being...
Oh, that's right.
But she's just so effervescent all the time, and there are a lot of really good moments where she's kind of turning on a dime, where you see kind of the real emotions underneath the facade, and they do get her out here looking crazy on the street, because there's when they have her out there with that sign, and some woman with a child on her arm is berating her, and she finally kind of breaks down and tells her to F off.
It almost takes you there, but
Yes.
It's not enough. Anyway, I still would recommend it.
Yeah, for sure.
And if it's streaming, for sure, I would watch it.
Yeah, it'll be on Peacock.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know if I think if this could have been made a few years down the road, and we can have more lavish productions again outside of COVID.
Oh, I did want to say too, we do get introduced to Regina's mom, and she's trying to. It is one of the more heartfelt moments where she's telling her mom, like, "I don't think I can stay with Lee Curtis. Like, I can't keep doing this." And the mom is like, "I didn't realize I raised such a fool. Like, you think that like this lifestyle you have like doesn't require some concessions, and that's a good man." And it just feels all very cliched and kind of dated.
I think it could have been darker. It should have hit a lot harder. That said, if you like either of these two people, it's really worth a watch. And we keep bringing up Greenleaf because there really aren't a lot of representation.
If there's anyone from the OWN
world.
network, I think we deserve a stipend for hyping up Greenleaf.
Oh, Lynn Whitfield.
Our Venmo is in the description.
I want to see Lady May in a situation like this.
Yeah, what if Lady May found out that Pastor Greenleaf was fucking these boys? Like, what?
I mean, that happens to her daughter in that, but
that's right.
But
yeah.
But again, there are so really few representations of this world, in particular, the Black church, that are going to be available to a wider audience than just the people involved in it. So for that, I think it's worth a watch on its own. But
shout out to Keith David.
Oh, always Keith David.
Lynn Whitfield. Mm-hmm. And who's the daughter? She has the name that makes her sound like she's Dandridge. What's her name? Merle Dandridge.
Merle, yes, beautiful.
Who has great hair. She's beautiful.
Beautiful.
What would you give this movie?
2.5.
I would give it 2.5 out of 5 as well. Anything else?
No.
Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.